So now we're going to be doing the hair, and I've listed the colors we're going to be using. And when I'm doing really dark black hair, if I want to give the illusion of that sort of shine and almost that, the old comic books, that sort of blue tint to the dark hair, what I'll do is I'll use B00, and I'll go ahead and just put that on where I want my highlight to be. And you can see here I'm sort of moving in a squiggly sort of line through the center of her bun, and then I'll come along through the rest of her hair, and I'm making sure not to draw a really, really straight sort of line. I'm sort of squiggling it around, and that's going to be where my highlight is going to fall. I like adding that in right away. It just makes it easier for me to visualize and work towards getting the look I want. So now I'll be taking my C3. I like using the cool grays when I'm doing black hair. I find if I use the warm, it sort of gives more of a gray, they look like they have gray hair, so I like the cool gray. And I'll be just filling in towards, so I'm filling in the white spaces towards the blue, and I'm not really coloring over the blue. And I'm just using really fine sort of feathering strokes. That works really well when you're doing hair. So I would just be doing this one section to start with. Like I said before, it's easier to do small sections at a time. The ink doesn't dry in between. So I'll be moving on to C5, and I'll be coloring over that C3 again with these sort of fine feathering strokes. Kind of looks like hair strands a little bit. I'm not being perfect. Just keep your wrist a little loose, and it gives a nice, more natural look. Then we'll work downwards from the part. And I know it doesn't look great now, but once we start adding the next color, you're going to start seeing, you're going to see where I'm going. So that's on nicely, and I still have that blue shining through, and because I've been imperfect, or haven't been so, how can I say, I haven't been exact with my strokes, you're getting a really natural sort of hair feel to this. So this is my C7, quite dark, and again, just sort of using these flicking, feathering strokes. I'm making sure, though, that at the bottom, I'm not leaving any white gaps. So at the edges here, we don't want big white gaps. But then as it's going into the blue area, you're getting that nice sort of strand sort of look. See? I find this one step is what makes such a big difference. So I'll do the same to the other side. And then I'm going to work upwards. You can turn your work around, move it around so that it's at a comfortable angle for you. That way everything will look more natural. So now I'm going to be taking the C9, and the C9 I don't use very, very much. I just go in where there's folds or where there's the very edge of something or a shadow, and it's very subtle, but just adding that in sort of gives just a little bit more contrast. So you're going to see I'm not using a whole lot. And you can use, especially with these La La Land stamps, you can use the lines that are on the hair to help you add your shading. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my C3, just going to feather over the blue. Now if you want to leave it more blue looking, that's fine too, but I like to go over it a little bit. Just take the edge off the blue. Don't add a whole lot because you'll end up sort of losing your contrast. And then you can take a look at it, and if there's anywhere that you think, okay, I need a little bit more color, you can just go in with your markers and add it. I'm adding a little bit of C5 here. I just felt that it was too wide and it didn't match up with the other side. Then I'm going to take my C7 and fill in a little bit more because I want the two sides to be pretty well even. So that's that part done. And we're going to move on now to another portion of her hair, and we're going to be using the colors in the same order. Okay, taking my C3 and I'm just sort of filling in that white space into the blue, but I'm not covering over the blue entirely. And you can see I like to cut out my, if I know I'm going to be cutting out my image for my card or whatever I'm using the image for, then I like to go ahead and cut it out ahead of time. I just find it makes it easier to move around and to color. So now you have the C5 going in, and you can see that I've only colored that one half section of hair. Again, it's just so much easier to work in small sections. I can't say it enough. I find that if you just follow that one piece of advice, your coloring is going to get so much better. So moving on to C7. Having trouble getting that cap off. Here again I'm being a little bit more careful, not adding nearly as much color, making sure that again it's little fine feathering strokes, and just moving that image around so that it's at a really good angle for my hand. So now I'm going to take my C9, and again I'm going to be using just a little bit of this to increase the contrast along sort of all the little lined areas, those sort of different sections of hair, and just tiny little feather strokes to try to fill that in. I'll be taking now my C3 and I'll be going over the center where the blue is showing through, Again, if you want to leave it more blue, that's also like really great. I like that look too. Today I'm going to be filling it in. So just a little bit, because the more you put on, the more you sort of push away the darker colors. So now at this point, go ahead and look at it, and if there's any areas where you think, okay, I need a little bit more shadow, go ahead and grab your marker and add that in. I just wanted to sort of close that gap in a little bit. I thought there was just too much highlight showing. So just going in with my C7, adding that in. Now I've already added my C3 to the other side, so I don't need to do that. So I'm going to be grabbing my C5, and I'm going to be starting the other section of hair, and I'm going to try to mirror what I did on the other side. I want it to sort of look the same. So feather strokes with my C5. Here you don't have to be nearly as careful as when you're working with the darker colors. I'm going to move to my C7. And as I'm doing this, I'm looking over on the other side and making sure I'm sort of matching up the areas so they look the same. So I had a look at that and sort of thought, oh, I need a little bit more there. It's also good to sort of pull back from your work. Sometimes when you have your face right, an inch above it, it's hard to sort of see it. So sometimes it's good to sort of sit back, have a look at it. So here's my C9 going in and adding that last little layer of contrast, making sure that edges that need to be dark don't have any little tiny white spots in them. Taking my C3, covering over that blue, just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit. Okay, so I'm taking my C5 and just adding a little bit more here and there so that my two areas, each side, each quadrant, I guess you could say, of the hair matches up. So now I'll just do the bun really quick. Same technique, same sort of sequence to the markers. If anything, just be careful that you just don't add too much color. It's such a small space. It's easy to add too much, so hold yourself back a little bit. Grabbing my C7. And just moving that over so it's easier for me to color in. grabbing my C9, and you're going to see I'm just really just putting it around the edges. I want there to be that sort of shadow, that area where it looks like that part is behind the rest of the hair. So to do that, you're going to add some dark color. The last thing I'm going to do is add my C3 to the center portion of the bun. Again, just getting rid of the blue sort of tone. And that's it. That's how I do my black hair and my skin tones for my images. I hope this video was useful for you. For more information, you can visit my blog at www.jeanette-happythoughtsinkspots.blogspot.ca. The image can be bought at La La Land Craft Stamps. I've left you the link for that. Thanks for stopping by.